when it was the age of 10, that was fine. Legally back then, they were not a pedophile. Today, legally, they are a pedophile.
Wait, when was the age of consent 10?
I cannot share everything that I know about the situation, right? So people made allegations.
Sneako's debating Moistcritikal on the age of consent. Why?
New research.
In the 1800s, when it was the age of 10, that was fine. Legally back then, they were not a pedophile. Today, legally, they are a pedophile.
Wait, when was the age of consent 10?
Need to be. They can coexist. You recognize that, right?
No. Then that's when you muddy up morality with the law. Now you're allowing the government to determine morality, and that's where things get muddied up, because if...
Just to be clear, the government doesn't determine morality, but the government determines what's legal or not legal, and legality is absolutely downstream from morality. What do you think criminal law comes from? It's usually the most contemptible, immoral things that a society has agreed upon should be criminalized.
They changed it with like they did before, like 200 years ago in the 1800s when it was the age of 10, that was fine. Legally back then...
I want to know in the 1800s where people were f***ing 10-year-olds with societal blessing. 10 years old? I don't believe it.
They were not a pedophile. Today, legally, they are a pedophile. There's no consistency there.
But
you can't allow the
government
government to determine morality because it changes all the time. Tomorrow, if the U.S. government legalized bestiality, if the government legalized incest, based off your logic, there'd be no reason why that's wrong. Can I ask you, Moist, do you think that incest is wrong?
Yes.
Why is incest wrong?
I want to point out... Hold on. I'm going to play this. There's a fallacy that he just did that is... I don't know if there's a word for it, but there should be. This is a serious one, not like a meme thing.
There is under no circumstances any excuse for anyone of the same bloodline to be romantic like that. By no means at all.
Why?
I really think it should be pretty obvious why.
I don't know why. I'm asking you.
I know where you're going with this because I've heard this argument from another streamer before about like the ethics of incest. If they don't have a kid and thus don't
Am I Voldemort to Charlie too, or
pass down like bad genes that lead to a bad child. I've heard this before.
But I want to hear your answer, because are we going with legal or are we going to follow some sort of morality, sort of consistent morality? Why is incest wrong?
Incest is wrong because I believe that no family dynamic should ever include a sexual relation.
Why?
I don't think that, because it is not healthy. It is a bad thing to do. It is a horrible thing to subject someone to.
But why is it horrible? Because who told you that?
It's what I believe. And also, if you do have a child with your own kin, the child suffers.
Okay, but say it's two gay brothers. Chris Tyson and other Chris Tyson and Chris. If they're two brothers and they decide to be in a no, genuine question. It's what you believe in. I want to figure out where your beliefs come from. You personally believe that.
My beliefs come from.
He's doing a religious argument. I don't know how to define this inconsistency, but ordinarily, think finance and think derivative markets. Okay. We can think insurance, for instance. Ordinarily, you might have, let's say, the price of a given stock. Okay. Well, let's say that this is the, or let's just say this is a thing. Okay. Let's say that we see this thing and it looks like this. Okay. And then let's say that there is another thing. All right. And let's say that this thing looks like, we'll say it looks like this, okay? You have these two things that are like definitionally, okay? Through some like property of the things themselves, they tend to track one another. There's some constituent like elements. There's something that makes these two things like almost always map onto one another, or one is a derivative of the other, okay? And then somebody will ask you to test your hypothetical, okay? They'll test you and they'll say, well, what if red, okay? What if instead of red being like this, what if red was like this, okay? And then they'll ask you that question. And the issue that you run into is like, well, then I guess I would have to say that red is as you're saying, but you're breaking so many of my intuitions because these things are normally very closely mapped onto each other. So it's really, really, really hard to imagine red being the inverse of this rather than being like a derivative that is highly correlated with this. I don't know if I can fathom that, right? When people talk about law, a law is passed in a democratic society when enough people have given the legislature the power to enact legislation criminalizing some particular thing, okay? That's where criminal law comes from. On the aggregate, people in society tend to believe that a thing is so wrong that the government, the state, the people have an interest in punishing you for it, okay? This is criminal law, right? These particular things are so bad, all of us here are mutually interested in seeing you suffer for it. It's a bad thing. You should be punished for it. When you ask a question about law and you say, well, hey, what if the law said that you could have sex with 2-year-olds? Now what? Now would you do what the law says? Well, you want to say, well, no, I wouldn't. But the problem is that when you say law, remember how when I spoke about words, what is a woman? And I say there's a whole bunch of like associated concepts that light up, and these are how we map on words to definitions. When you say law, you're not just talking about writing on a piece of paper. You're saying, here's what the question really is. You're saying, what if a group of people all came together in a society that you were in, and all of them collectively lobbied the legislature to make it so that it was illegal for you to perform a certain action? Then would you think that action is bad? Well, that's a lot harder to consider. It's like, well, hold on. A majority of society all came together. Well, why? That would actually be my first question. I think, well, why is this illegal? Well, now I'm kind of wondering, right? Is there something I'm missing or something, right? There's like a fallacy where you take two heavily associated things and you try to break them apart, or you inverse one of them and then you try to inquire about that particular thing. And it leads you down some interesting hypothetical alleyways, but you're missing like some key part that makes these two things ordinarily related that makes the analogy disanalogous, in my opinion. Does that make sense? The people do this with other concepts as well. I'm trying to think of what else. It'll basically be anytime somebody asks you like, well, what if this thing was different? But the thing is tied really closely to another concept, and it almost always comes from that. And you're asking them to break an association and then just and then entertain a concept in a vacuum. It's like, well, fuck, I don't know. It's a lot harder to consider this particular thing than you're giving it credit for, you know? Yeah, I don't know what the name of this would be, or if this even is a. What if babies weren't conscious? Oh, that's a good one. Sure, yeah. I understand what you're saying, but I think Sneako is speaking from a minority point of view that has different morals from the majority of the society. You can have different morals personally than that of society, but you can't contradict what society is deemed to be criminal. Those are two incredibly important truths for any well-functioning democracy. We should have space for people with vastly different personal moral systems, but on some moral concepts, we have to come together and agree on some things that are so important. You can call them Malum and Say, or you can call them, I guess, Use Kogan or whatever. One day I'll look up more of the difference between these two things, whatever. There are some things that are probably so wrong, and you should come to an agreement on it that if you, if you disagree, there's no place for you in society. Feels like you defer to moral relativism too much. Okay. That has nothing to do with the next part of your sentence, but we should absolutely be able to say whether an action is immoral outside of law. Sure, you can. You can analyze the law and you can analyze morality as two different things, But it's weird when you try to say, well, what if it was moral, or what if it was allowed in the law to, murder people? And it's like, would it make it moral then? Well, no, probably not. But like, this is not how the law ordinarily functions, right? Like, you just, yeah. Yeah, like, I don't know. People do this to me so often in debate. I should be able to think of these. I can think of examples, but they're all ridiculous. Women should always have to give birth to their children. It's not right to have abortions. Well, what if children were born like Freddy Krueger or Edward Scissorhand and they came out with knives and they were killing their moms all the time? Okay, well, I guess in that case, you can have abortions or you should never have children. But but children aren't normally born that way. What the fuck kind of question is it? It's like, the fuck? It's not. That doesn't happen. Like, things don't get codified into law unless a majority of the society agrees that it's immoral. So how am I supposed to? I'm supposed to conceive of a society that exists that would pass a law that's highly immoral. Like, it's just I don't know. Can you give us the actual example you're referring to? It was this one for the children thing. What if it was illegal? What if society passed a law to 10-year-olds or some shit? I don't know. Malum in se is a common law term, while jus cogens is an international law. Oh. Is it both the same thing, basically? They refer to similar concepts? Why are certain things that everyone agrees are immoral legal, such as lying, but the things we don't all agree on being immoral, such as incest, are illegal? Why isn't lying illegal? From a legal perspective, I don't know. I'm not actually sure. How do you decide? Why isn't lying illegal? Do I want to... Hold on. Heads yes, tails no. Oh, fuck. I was going to go through an 180-day ban every single retard in chat saying, actually, some kinds of lying are illegal. Sometimes it is illegal. When you lie in a contract, some lying is illegal. Clearly, that's obviously what we're not talking about. I don't know why the you would bring that up as a well, actually. Obviously, we're not talking about lying in a contract where it is, and I don't even know if that would be considered illegal. If you can be sued in a civil court, is it illegal against the law? I'm not actually even sure of that term, but it's obviously that's not what we're talking about. You're retarded. Isn't it the relative harm? Well, no, because for criminal law, there doesn't have to be harm. The harm is to society, remember. For criminal law, you don't have to prove damages. If somebody assaults you, rapes you, sexually assaults you, does, damages, breaks something, you don't have to prove damages for that. It's a criminal law.
One of the challenges of this situation is that because someone has a right to privacy, I cannot share everything that I know about the situation, right? So people made allegations, and in order to defend myself, I have to violate someone's privacy. And I'm not going to do that. I'll never do that. The good news, the relieving thing for me...
Wait, hold on.
Slightly restful vacation or very restful vacation.
10 minutes.
I was working a ton, and it's really nice to be back. Today, we are going to be looking at a couple of posts about being tired of working, ADHD, and all this kind of stuff. But
I don't mean the actual harm, but whether or not lying is an egregious enough harm on society as a whole. I mean, I don't know. I think there are some pretty egregious harms. Like, you could argue, for instance, that parents with children who cheat, that's a huge harm on society, right? That single parents or children in broken families or the destruction of marriage or whatever, you could argue oh, well, that would be a big harm, but none of that is illegal, right? So, and I'm sure we could probably think of other things that are very, very harmful and we would all consider immoral, but they aren't illegal. I think doping in sporting events, you might be able to get civil penalties for that. I'm not sure. You probably can, because you probably just sign a contract or agree to something when you go to do something, I don't know.
Before we get started with that, as some of y'all may have seen, I was recently reprimanded by the Medical Board of Massachusetts, and I think it's really important to kind of talk about this. So the first thing to...
Did you actually enjoy spending time with Reckful? He feels like a total buzzkill. I think Reckful was a total buzzkill for a lot of people. I like spending time with him because I like obnoxious back and forth like that. I think it was surely fun. Sometimes it's annoying, but if I'm annoyed, it lasts for like 5 minutes for me, and then I'm over it.
Massachusetts. And I think it's really important to kind of talk about this. So the first thing to understand is that this is like really, really important. We've been cooperating with a board investigation that started about 2 years ago. It's finally concluded. And I think that this is like a very healthy and fair way to do things. So I know a lot of people like the work that we do and they're like, oh my God, like this is so unfair. No, this is exactly how things are supposed to happen. So about 5 years ago, I saw a problem with mental health. I saw a degree of AOE damage that was being done, where as a clinician working in an office, I realized that like there is no way, like the number of people who need help, we would need an army of clinicians that we don't have to try to fix this problem. The extent to which people are suffering and the extent that the mental health crisis that we were facing required some kind of additional innovation or something needed to be done differently. So I started streaming. And when I started streaming, I did everything that I could to make sure that this was okay. And then what happened is someone filed a complaint in 2022, and this is exactly why medical boards exist, right? So medical boards exist because occasionally you'll have a doctor who tries to do something a little bit different. And is this okay or is this not okay? So over 2 years, we've been investigated by the medical board and we've been reprimanded, but it's also important to understand what the reprimand is for, what it means, and also what it does not mean. So the reprimand is for undermining the public's faith in the profession. So in the board complaint, and what many people thought was that I was doing something wrong. So this includes everything from being negligent or in some way responsible for rectal suicide, that I was streaming live therapy, that I was conducting the practice of medicine on the internet with patients. So this is really important to understand. The board found that none of those things were true. So what this practically means is that there is a reprimand for undermining the public's faith, but also that, you know, boards have a lot of power, right? So they can do everything from fine me, they can put me on probation, they can recommend ethical training, they can revoke my license, they can suspend my license, they can do all kinds of more practical consequences. But they elected to do none of those things because they found no cause to do any of those things. The other thing that the board can do is determine that what we are doing on the internet is the practice of medicine and therefore requires all these other things. They did not find that that was true as well. So we've been cooperating with the board for the last 2 years. I actually think it has been an eye-opening, humbling, fair, and excellent process. This is why medical boards exist. Because when there is a problem, when I show up and say, hey, I'm here to help, is what I am doing harmful in some way, helpful in some way? Where is the line? I personally feel relieved that the board has gone through everything that we've done with a fine-tuned tooth comb. And they have placed no restrictions on my license, no probation, nothing like that. And furthermore, and more importantly, no restrictions on the work that we do here. So they could have said, hey, you shouldn't do interviews anymore. That's therapy. No more streaming, no more content creation. This is not allowed. This is the practice of medicine. They did not find that any of those things were actually applicable. So I'm still allowed to interview people. I'm still allowed to stream. I can make mental health content on the internet, and I can see patients without restriction. So that feels really good to me. Now, a lot of people may be surprised by those findings because they're like, oh my God, like this is terrible. Or what we do is terrible. And I think this is where it's like really important to understand that when we started streaming, we've had a continuous process of improvement because we take this seriously, right? So when I started streaming, didn't have much of an idea of what I was doing. And then every month that goes by, every couple months that go by, we improve our process. So we have a rigorous process of onboarding, boundary setting. We have oversight from a scientific advisory board. We've consulted with the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and we will continue to improve our process. I think because our process is so rigorous, this is why the board had no recommendations on what we should do differently and no restrictions on what we already do. So we take this really seriously, and it is absolutely relieving to have someone go through all of the information and
Your arguments that laws are a reflection of society isn't always true. The Supreme Court deciding Trump is king is just one example. Okay, you're getting a 180-day ban for two reasons, okay? One, something being true in the aggregate doesn't mean that there aren't sometimes exceptions. Sometimes there are laws that we don't all agree on. There are probably still a lot of state laws on books, like about dueling or sodomy, that people don't agree with, but they just aren't enforced anymore. So I'm sure we can find some exceptions to that. In the aggregate in general, law tends to reflect the collective morality of a people. The second part, you said the Supreme Court decided something. The Supreme Court doesn't write laws. The Supreme Court only interprets them. It's a judicial review on whether or not some particular thing conforms to law or not. It doesn't actually pass a law in and of itself, okay? Link in the Tide Pods.
basically say there's nothing better that you can be doing right now. We have no recommendations. So this is awesome, right? And furthermore, no restrictions. The other thing that sometimes surprises people is that, a lot of people thought that I was negligent with RECFL and all this kind of stuff. And this is where the board actually outlines this very clearly, that I operated within standard guidelines. There's no evidence of negligence or malpractice or anything like that. Now, this may surprise people because they're like, oh my God, what I did was so bad. But, I'm going to say this. I've said it before, but I'll kind of say it again. So one of the challenges of this situation is that because someone has a right to privacy, I cannot share everything that I know about the situation, right? So people made allegations, and in order to defend myself, I have to violate someone's privacy. And I'm not going to do that. I'll never do that. The good news, the relieving thing for me is that with the medical board, the right to privacy, because they are a medical board, they reviewed a lot of records, things like that, right? They can look at patient information and they are allowed to make a determination after they've looked through all of the information. And I don't even blame people for thinking negatively about me, right? Because you guys didn't have all the information and you can't ever get all the information. I can't give you the information. It's just not possible. And that's okay, right? So it's part of what being a content creator is. So I think this is a really important, healthy process. This is what oversight looks like, right? This is what we need to be safe, is for someone to go through. It's totally fine to complain, and then the board goes through everything and they make a determination. I think it's been an incredibly fair process. I'm personally relieved, and I'm actually really happy that I continue to do everything that I've been doing, right? No restrictions on my license or content creation. So I showed up here 5 years ago to help, and I will continue to do so in the same ways that I have been. I will also continue, and we as an organization, because this is the other thing to understand, is that this goes way beyond me, right? We have a scientific advisory board. We have, even an ethicist on the scientific advisory board. We have a content team. We have an onboarding team. We have a research team. We have a compliance team, right, to make sure that everything that we're doing is in compliance with all the laws and regulations. And once again, no findings of a lack of compliance with anything that we do, right? So that's really important to understand. And we will continue to improve. So just because the board did not find any faults with our process does not mean that we are not listening to your feedback, does not mean that we are not listening to your criticism, does not mean that we are doing a perfect job and that we can't do better. So overall, this has been, honestly, it's been eye-opening, humbling, but I think it's a very healthy thing. This is the way that things work in the world, right? When you try to do something new, occasionally we need a third party that is objective, that is going to look at everything that you do and determine what you are doing right and what you are doing wrong. I'm actually incredibly grateful to the board. I know some people have been like, oh my God, that they're doing their job, right? It's their job to make sure that I'm not doing something out of line or whatever, and then they take my license away if I am. That's what they're supposed to do. And so I'm just really grateful to everyone who's been helpful to us, everyone who's given us feedback on what we could be doing better, everyone who's helped us create the processes that keep people safe in the work that we do. I'm grateful to everyone for all that kind of stuff, right? I'm even grateful to the American Medical Association and American Psychiatric Association for weighing in what way they could in our processes for our attorneys and everyone else. And I'm grateful to y'all for allowing us to do this work, right? So we showed up 5 years ago to help, and I think we've done some help in that time, and we'll continue to do so. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we don't need to change actually a single thing about our process. Everything that we've been doing, it's not perfect by any means, but the board made no recommendations on restrictions to practice or any of the content or interviews that we do. So I'm sure that this isn't the end of it. I think that we have posts to cover today, so I think it's important to kind of honor those. And at the same time, this is, I think it's important, we got to address this in some way. So I'm really grateful to everyone for allowing me to do this work, the medical board included, y'all included, right? I don't get to do this work unless the rest of the world decides that it's okay. I love that on a Friday in the middle of the day, my job is to talk to the internet about feeling tired and ADHD and, being below average IQ and how you function in the world. Like, it's an absolute privilege to do this work. It's absolutely important to do this work, because I still think that, like, what is happening right now is insufficient to, the systems in place are insufficient to support our mental health. And we see piles and piles and piles of evidence to that effect, right? Suicide rates are on the rise, depression is on the rise, anxiety is on the rise, technology addiction is on the rise, loneliness is on the rise, touch starvation is on the rise, right? Thankfully, we have a lot of other institutions that are aware of these problems and trying to do something about them. The Office of the U.S. Surgeon General, the World Health Organization, the United Nations. A lot of people are trying to do something about this. And this is the small slice that I have chosen to try to help this problem. I hope to continue to do so. I feel privileged that I will continue to be.
Is it worth going over this? I don't know if this is worth it or not. There are like 3 layers to this. You have the board received some type of information, and they decided to investigate based on what's been said publicly. No, I'm so sorry. I think even based on what was on the board's writing, they received a complaint, or they received some sort of notification. Complaint. It sounds like they reached out to Dr. K to talk about it. Hey, just so you know, we received this complaint. We're investigating. It sounds like Dr. K said, okay, well, hey, why don't you go ahead and just expand your investigation and look at all the content we do so that we can get some type of ruling on it. And then the board went through everything, and it seems like, especially in regards to the Recful stuff, the board evaluated all of Dr. K's content, especially in regards to Byron's suicide. And the board, in factoring in all of this stuff, came to a decision. So the board factors in a ton of stuff about a complaint. They get a complaint. They do all of their investigation. They do a lot of work. And as they're deliberating, something that they're seeing, something that they're seeing is something that you're doing is not right. Probably you shouldn't do this thing anymore, or something that you've done wasn't right and you shouldn't do that ever again. Something in there was determined. And they also said that for the most part, most of what you do is fine, so you can continue on doing most of what you are doing, okay? So from this investigation, there is a consent order that is made public where the board lists, here is some like public stuff that we've observed, like here are some facts. It might be pertaining to the complaint. It might not be. It might be pertaining to what came up in their investigation. It might not be. It's probably related to why the reprimand was issued, but we don't know for sure. But here's a consent order. We've gone through all of your content. You're safe for all of it now, okay, because we've gone through all of it. However, we're going to issue a reprimand because something you did was not 100% A-okay, okay? Probably wasn't a huge deal because it was just a reprimand. There wasn't a license suspension or termination or something more serious, but still not like the best, okay? I think that what this process allows to happen is it means that the board got to do like a full review and an investigation. They probably got to communicate privately to Dr. K, hey, just so you know, this is what we found, okay? You probably should never do this particular thing again. My guess is going to be something to do with Recful, just because of the facts that were laid out in the consent order. That's my guess. And Dr. K probably said like, okay, sure, yeah, I won't do that anymore. Sure, okay, yeah, I understand. I mean, he's dead, so that's not happening. Like, we do things differently now, it's fine. We've already implemented a bunch of things that are different, which I believe was listed in the consent order. And I think Dr. K said as much. Oh, look, we're already changing all of our processes, right? So when this reprimand goes out, I think it allows 2 different things to happen that are beneficial for both parties. One, it allows the board to say, we've gone over this, we did our due diligence, we made sure that nothing crazy is going to happen in the future, and we've taken care of that, and we've issued a reprimand for behavior that we thought wasn't 100% on the up and up. But it also allows Dr. K to come away and say, hey, look, they went over all of our content. None of our stuff is changing substantively. And I didn't do anything so horrible because it was just like, it was just a reprimand that's going to last for however much, period of time. I don't know how long a reprimand you have to post that notice for. Yeah. So I think this is, I think more or less this is what's happened. I think when Dr. K says they went through everything and they said that nothing we did was wrong, that can't be true because they issued a reprimand. They didn't issue the reprimand for nothing. Something happened that they weren't happy with, but it's likely, given a good faith interpretation of Dr. K and assuming that the board isn't like a horrible, corrupt institution, it's likely that whatever bad behavior they thought did happen has already been remedied by the new processes and procedures that Dr. K and his org have implemented, and they're not as concerned about it going forward. That's I think that's more or less what's happened here. Okay. What are the new processes and procedures? Dr. K laid it out when they posted on the subreddit. My guess is going to be that if you could see into the board's deliberation, it's going to be it's going to have something to do with a violation within this ethical opinion, which is why it's being cited to here. And the violation relating to this ethical opinion is probably going to come from the fact pattern laid out here. So it was probably something to do with how he engaged with Reckful, and the violation probably had something to do with the AMA ethical opinion 8.12, section 8, subsection 12, or whatever. So that's going to be my guess because of how this was laid out. I think any sort of doctor having a patient die would make me think it's not the best doctor to go to. Well, then you will never see a specialist in any like highly lethal disease area in your entire life. I hope you don't get cancer because you'll never go to an oncologist. I hope you don't ever have, issues with your organs because you're never going to visit someone in internal medicine. I hope that you never have surgery because every surgeon is probably a patient. Like what a bizarre thing. Yeah. I'm confused why they would reprimand without spelling out exactly why. Is the reprimand mainly to alert the public or only to correct Dr. K's behavior? If I had to guess, and I'm treading on imaginary ice here, my guess is going to be that the reprimand allows him to get something in writing so that he doesn't mess up again. It allows them to do a full investigation so they know that nothing super serious is going on. It allows them to alert the public that they know that something not quite great has happened, but it gives him enough flexibility and wiggle room to kind of like continue his practice without feeling like he's being crucified over a particular thing, is going to be my guess. Keep in mind that when you have a board, right, there's always like countervailing forces when you have a particular body where the body wants to be able to make good rulings on things. But the body also wants to be participated in. It wants people to see it as legitimate, right? Remember when we talk about international law, when we talk about like the law of armed conflict, we're trying to balance out having civilians be protected while also allowing nations to engage in war, right? Because if one of these gets too big, then no one's going to pay attention, right? If you had a board, I'm so outside of if somebody here like is a member of any of these boards or is subject to any of these boards, you have somebody to say, feel free to interject. But my guess is going to be that boards probably don't want to come out, especially on a simple reprimand. They don't want to come out and say like, this is exactly what this person did wrong, particularly to this thing, because that might be particularly damaging to the reputation of somebody that is board certified. So the board would end up kind of undermining itself. And a lot of the people that are a member of these organizations that are board certified might look at the board with a lot more animosity, where they're like, okay, well, f you. I'm getting board certified by this shit. If I f up with one thing, you're going to publish this mistake to the entire f***ing world. And now I've got to tell, now I'm f***ed. Thanks. You've nuked my career, board. Thank you so much for the reprimand, right? That's my guess. So the issuing this type of consent order gives enough flexibility to all of the parties involved to walk away and kind of like save face, right? Probably did something bad in relation to these ethical opinions here. Probably, these are the ethical opinions. This was your behavior relating to Reckful. There's probably something bad that happened here. We're issuing a reprimand. You can present this as you'd like to the public or to future patients, whoever you have to make this reprimand publicly available to. You can present it as you want. That's fine. But you know that we know like this thing happened and hopefully it doesn't happen again, right? It allows everybody to kind of like walk away with everything intact, if that makes sense. Destiny, psychologists here. Yep, that's about right. They tend not to specify unless it's full on revoking. Reprimand implies severe in most people's eyes. If his license wasn't suspended, it seems like when most people hear the word reprimand, they assume the worst. At least I did. Reprimand just means basically like an official punishment. Maybe call it like a written write-up, I guess, or a written warning. At Destiny, the board does not care. They are designed for the client's protection. They are designed to hold us accountable, period. Here, they likely didn't have a specific thing they could target. Are you a physician? I'd be interested in chatting with you. Intuitively, I'm leaning so heavily against what you're saying intuitively that I don't know if I believe it. I'm sure that, one, is the board typically made up of physicians or people that are very close to physicians? The board exists probably, when you have any sort of like disciplinary system, let's move away from the online world, okay? Move away from Twitch and the retarded world of like, we bad people because fuck them, right? When you have like compliance boards and you're issuing punishments, all right, especially for doctors, okay? Because these are people that have invested extensively in their training. There's a couple of things that you've got to keep in mind. You've got to be very, very, very careful of these things, okay? One is you don't want to be destroying people's careers with such a heavy investment without a really, really, really good reason, okay? Because they've invested heavily in their career, you're destroying a huge investment. And two, you're discouraging other people from stepping in and being part of a particular field, right? Well, this is a board. These guys throw the book at you for everything. That I'm not going to be a doctor of whatever the that is. I'm going to go and do some different shit. That I'm not going to have my entire 12 years of med school, college, and everything else thrown under the bus because of a reprimand. That bullshit, right? So we can say that like boards exist to protect the interests of patients. They do, of course, but for behavior that's not like a total revocation of a license, the goal here, 1 billion%, is supposed to be corrective action. What you want to do is you want to make it so that this person doesn't do this mistake again. Your goal is not to destroy the career, right? Now, my guess, I'm totally guessing, and if somebody has one of these, like a license revocation or whatever or something, my guess is going to be that for a big suspension or for a revocation, I bet that these orders, they're a lot more detailed. That'd be my guess. I could be wrong. If somebody has a link to one, we could check. But my guess is going to be that when a license is fully revoked, I bet they get into more detail for it. But for a reprimand, you're not trying to destroy the person's reputation or career. You just want to give a stern warning. Now it's in writing, and you let the public know as well that you've done an investigation, and then you move on from there. But it's not just to keep the patient, keep the patient's interest in mind. It's probably also for corrective action for the individual practitioner themselves, and to make sure that they correct their action and they behave well in the future. That's my guess. Destiny, corrective action. Meanwhile, Dr. K says they found he did nothing wrong. I don't think it's true when he says they found that he did nothing wrong, but I do think, because Dr. K comes off to me as an intelligent person, there's like, now I'm in total conjecture land, okay? I have no proof of any of this. I don't have any behind the scenes conference or anything, but now I'm in total conjecture land. My guess is going to be that after Byron kills himself, especially, and maybe even after the conversations, Dr. K probably talked with his team and was like, okay, this is obviously something's not good here, okay? It feels like we're probably crossing boundaries in terms of therapy. Obviously, Reckford just killed himself. I'm telling him that I want to be with him for 2 years and I love him. It's probably not okay. My guess is that after the Reckful stuff, or maybe even while it was ongoing, they probably started to implement processes and procedures where they were like, we need to do something to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. And my guess is going to be is that by the time the board started investigating and everything, they probably found that they'd already implemented a lot of these things and that it probably wasn't going to be as much of a concern in the future. That's my guess, okay? I am part of an IRB. What is that? International Regulatory Board? I have no idea. Separate type of board that reprimanded Dr. K. You're generally right, but in some instances, such as noncompliance in research, you can get outed by the FBA. Or, I'm sorry, the FBA, the NBA, the FDA. Yeah, I'm sure in some instances it could be really bad. But the board would be fine saying something is an issue because these cases are meant to provide guidelines beyond the individual, their precedent and case law. I totally disagree. I seriously doubt that. I don't think that these are supposed to serve as precedent or case law or anything of the sort. I think that these are probably very particularized to an individual, and these aren't supposed to serve as building blocks for other types of things, would be my guess. Okay, this was a license revocation. Damn, 104 pages. Destiny, doesn't the language of the reprimand imply that it is possible that Dr. K didn't do anything too far out of the box, but it was still a faith loss, and that's why they gave it to him? Absolutely not. The written language implies the complete and total opposite. It says in very clear words, the respondent has engaged in conduct that undermines the public confidence in the integrity of the medical profession. And when they talk about engaging in conduct that undermines the public confidence in the integrity of the medical profession, the ethics rules that they're citing in here, okay, up here, these AMA ethical opinions, his behavior, his conduct was probably contrary to some part of these ethics rules. And then the conduct that he engaged in that was contrary to those ethics rules were probably contained in the fact pattern that was listed on the consent order, which had to do generally with Byron, generally. Do you have a guess as to what that specific conduct might be? I don't know. Probably inappropriate client-patient relationship or public, or like something inappropriate. I can't tell you in particular because I don't have a very thorough understanding of the underlying ethics at play. I don't know any of this code. I've never read any of it before, and I don't know any case law. I've never seen any like prior decrees that were ordered. So I couldn't tell you. I could barely guess, but. You can engage in conduct that is irrelevant to medicine that needs to be disciplined by the board, and both sides submit evidence to the statements of fact, as far as I'm aware. I doubt it. I seriously doubt that you would ever get a reprimand from an ethics board if that reprimand doesn't directly violate some sort of your ethics code or some sort of agreement that you've made in relation to your job. I don't think you would ever get a reprimand that is outside of your conduct as in this case, as a healthcare practitioner. You're absolutely incorrect. Okay, well, you can show me. I would be surprised if there were other consent orders that were structured in a completely dissimilar way. If you want to link me an example of one, you can show me, but. Okay, this was a license revocation by the State Medical Board of Ohio. So I think my guess was, in the event of a revocation, my guess was going to be that they probably release a lot more information. That was my guess, but I could be wrong. Okay, so here they're including like quotes from the complaint that was submitted, I think. Yeah, they're getting testimony and shit. They're publishing said testimony. They said that somebody inappropriately treated patients. They give the conduct, the rules that were violated. Yeah, there's a lot more specific information here. This would be my guess, is that for big license use, or maybe for big like a license suspension, if you're getting super punished, I bet that there's more and more information that comes out about these particular things. Would be my guess, but okay, hold on. Forethought wanted to link something. This is 100 pages. We're not reading something, but. Do you think that the criticism against Dr. K are valid? I feel like people have been pretty vindictive on Twitter. I don't know why they hate him, but it doesn't feel like it comes from a place of actual concern or care. It feels like it just comes from a hater place. I'm not entirely sure why. I don't know why he like gets some people so fucking riled up. I don't know. Okay, how long is this? Oh, this is short. Paul A. Scudder, MD, respondent and the complaint counsel agreed the Board of Registration of Medicine may issue this consent order with all the force and effect of a final decision within the meaning of blah, blah, blah. The respondent admits to the findings of fact described below and agrees the board may make conclusions of law and impose a sanction. Respondent is a 19, okay, don't care about this, practice of vascular surgery. 2016, an investigation was conducted into allegations of inappropriate conduct at the blank center in blank hospital. The respondent's conduct was a precipitating factor in the decision to require the respondent and staff to attend a sexual harassment in the workplace training. Following the 2016 training, the respondent on 4 or 5 occasions made comments to Medical Assistant 1, which inappropriately referred to the appearance of some staff members. Medical Assistant 1 told the respondent his comments were unwanted and inappropriate for the workplace, according to the sexual harassment training. In or about 2016, the respondent made an inappropriate comment to Nurse 2. He approached Nurse 2 and apologized later. Continued to compliment their appearance. Respondent resigned from this place after the hospital requested. According to the American Medical Association's Code of Medical Ethics, and then it cites here, sexual harassment in the workplace in medicine is unethical. The respondent subsequently received extended coaching from an experienced physician coach. They violated this by conducting But wait, how is this? I feel like this is supporting exactly what I just said. Or how is this contradicting what I said earlier? This is the exact same format for what we would expect to see, right? You've got a consent order. The consent order is listing, some findings of fact. They cite to a particular ethics requirement to being a medical practitioner, and so the reprimand is going to be because of the conduct that's in violation of a given regulation, right? Did you read the post? You said a case Dan cited. You will notice that there is explicit statements against his misconduct in the practice of medicine, even when not specified. This supports my argument. What is... Following the debate, as per usual, case, many people completely brain broken. Case law cited here. The relevant parts of Levy v. Board. Essentially, this case puts forward that a physician can be disciplined for behavior entirely unrelated to medicine. The rationale is that doctors that behave poorly in public, irrespective of their ability to practice medicine, undermines the confidence the public has in medical institutions. This is a general catch-all that is cited very frequently. The rationale sent Levy v. Board is sustained, expanded. Character or conduct undermining the public's confidence and the integrity of the medical profession are grounds for discipline of the board. Additionally, the board, the following two cases Dan cited to support my... Okay, so this case does not support that argument. This was improper behavior directly related to the practice of medicine. The ethics was literally founded in like a medicine ethical guidelines, and he was literally misbehaving in a medical environment in a hospital. Let me read this Levy v. Board decision. As part of its legislative policy, the statute governing the Board of Registration and Discipline in Medicine was amended. The statute as amended enables the board to revoke, suspend, or cancel the certificate of registration, license, or otherwise discipline a physician for a number of specified reasons. Note 6, additionally, the board received a delegation of legislative authority and a mandate that it shall, after proper notice and hearing, adopt rules and regulations governing the practice of medicine in order to promote the public health, welfare, and safety. The act provided that nothing in this section, i.e. the section concerned with discipline, shall be construed to limit this general power of the board. Pursuant to this legislative mandate, the board on June 28, 1976, adopted a regulation making conviction of a crime a basis for discipline. See rules of procedure governing disciplinary proceedings before the Board of Registration and Discipline in Medicine. A complaint against a physician may be founded on conviction of any crime. Levy claims that the board's rule is an improper exercise of legislative power. He asserts that the absence of the words conviction of a felony in the statute precludes the board from disciplining physicians who are convicted of a felony not directly related to the practice of medicine. Okay, I see where our disagreement is. Okay. Here's what I'm saying. If you want to reprimand somebody, okay, you have to reprimand them for something that is related to what the board says is bad for their particular thing, for their profession, right? The board has the ability to list things here, right, that you can't do. And it sounds like there was I don't know who gives the board power, the statute governing the board of... So it sounds like there was a law passed saying that if you commit a felony or if you commit a crime, that can be used for, that can be the basis for some sort of reprimand for your license. So I guess so you're technically correct in that this doesn't, so now you can be reprimanded for things that aren't directly within the purview of the practice of medicine itself. That's technically true. However, for any sort of consent decree or consent order, you're still going to be able to cite to a regulation or statute because they had to change one in order to reprimand you for that. No? Keep reading. The relevant part of Raymond v. Board, mere intellectual power and scientific achievement without uprightness of character may be more harmful than ignorance. Highly trained intelligence combined with disregard of the fundamental virtues is a menace. It is difficult to conceive of an attitude more antithetical to a commitment to preserve life, alleviate suffering, and restore health than the mentally demonstrated by knowing possession of unregistered automatic submachine guns. Raymond's conviction unquestionably calls into question his ability to practice medicine. This is a different... Okay. The board's second and third grounds for revoking Raymond's license were that he lacked good moral character and that his conduct determined the confidence of the public in the integrity of the medical profession. As we have noted, the board has authority to adopt rules and regulations governing the practice of medicine in order to promote the public health, welfare, and safety. Lacks of good moral character and conduct undermining the public's confidence in the integrity of the medical profession are not specifically included among the statutory regulatory grounds for discipline. The board, however, so this was the key thing. Lack of good moral character and conduct undermining the public's confidence in the integrity of the medical profession are not specifically included among the statutory or regulatory grounds for discipline. The board, however, need not adopt its rules and regulations by formal rulemaking. Although formal promulgation may be the best practice, the board may adopt policies by adjudication as well. Arthurs v. Board of Registration in Medicine, the board did so here by announcing that lack of good moral character and conduct that undermines public confidence in the integrity of the medical profession are grounds for discipline. So I understand what they're saying here. I think that this kind of broadly supports your argument, but it seems like it was still based on his possessing of an unregistered automatic submachine gun, which was still based on this regulation about breaking a particular law that I guess they made it on the board so that now you can be reprimanded for committing a crime, I guess, as part of, I don't know which board this is. I don't know, this is the medical board or what, but let's see. Conclusions of law. Okay, stand cited. Okay, so this might be... Okay, so my next question was going to be, I think what we need to cite to prove Forethought's argument is we need a case that shows that somebody's breaking something, or somebody's like having not good character that's not explicitly breaking a law because it was called out here, and then isn't breaking something that's obviously a specific regulation. But so here we have a case about a parking violation. So if this case reads like it's cited here, then I would say this does support the argument that you can engage in behavior that is wholly unrelated to the medical profession or wholly unrelated to a regulation passed that they could reprimand you for. So this is only 4 pages. Let's read this. Consent order. Joan Finkelstein and the complaint counsel agreed that the Board of Registration of Medicine may issue the consent order in lieu of okay. Findings of fact. The respondent, okay, don't care about this. She's board certified in psychiatry. When they arrive on scene, okay, officers from the Brooklyn Police Department, went to this to investigate a report of a fight in progress. When they arrived on scene, they spoke with several witnesses who said that the respondent assaulted female A over a parking space. The witnesses told the officers that the respondent had been banging on female A's car. They saw the respondent reach inside female A's car. When female A exited her car, the respondent continued to verbally harass her. The respondent placed her hands on female A's arms in an attempt to make her get back into the car and move the car. The respondent appeared before the Brooklyn District Court for arraignment on charges of assault and battery, disorderly conduct, and disturbing the peace. The respondent resolved her matter before the court by agreeing to be placed on pretrial probation for 3 months. The court dismissed the respondent's case after she successfully completed the terms of her probation. Where's my criminal law people? If you're put on probation, does that mean that you necessarily pled guilty to something? In order to get probation? The respondent is engaged in conduct that undermines public confidence in the integrity of the medical profession. See this, and then they cite these 2 cases. The respondent's license is hereby reprimanded. No, it can be a no contest. What is no contest? Doesn't that mean you're pleading guilty to something? What did I just ask? That you said it can be no contest? If you get probation, does that mean you were guilty of a crime? What is pretrial probation? What is nolo contendere? A plea by which a defendant in a criminal prosecution accepts convictions as though a guilty plea had been entered, but does not admit guilt. Interesting. You still get a 180-day ban, though, for saying it like a fucking cunt. See ya. No, looking for U.S. criminal law. In criminal proceedings, a defendant may enter a plea of nolo contendere. I don't know how to pronounce this. Nolo contendere. In which the defendant does not accept or deny responsibility for the charges, but waives the right to a trial and agrees to accept the penalty. Interesting. I wonder what the purpose is. I guess it lets you get a penalty without having a thing on your record, maybe? Or would the plea of this be on your record? The no contender will appear on your driving record in whatever the fuck state this is. Athens, Clark County. Oh, Georgia. You're only allowed to do one of these every 5 years. Okay. Huh. My friend said he will not vote for Kamala because of her age. His evidence was menopause. Wouldn't you, if you wanted a woman president, and you were that kind of person, wouldn't menopause be a strong order or a strong reason to vote for one? Is a woman's hormones more regular after menopause? Okay. Okay, I think that this case satisfies Forethought's argument then. So it sounds like you can be reprimanded for things that fall wholly outside of the discipline of your particular practice. So in this case, medicine, and wholly outside of any formal regulation that has been promulgated through the board. I think that case would satisfy that if that was a reprimand that was issued. At the board, I would still say, though, that most likely Dr. K's behavior probably comported with something in that ethics guideline because it was listed there specifically, but it seems like you could be reprimanded for behavior that isn't necessarily an ethics guideline violation. What's up?
So just one quick thing. The ethics board is its own legal body. They basically have their own sets of laws and regulations, but are specifically endowed to regulate doctors.
Sure. Real quick, when you say its own legal body, it's a private institution, right?
No, it is a legal body governed by the state.
Is it which
Medical
board?
So for this, it's the Massachusetts Board of Regulations of Registrations, I believe. For Massachusetts, for some reason, it's a Commonwealth and has a weird name for it, but it's the same thing as medical board in other states.
Okay, and all medical boards are state boards?
As far as I'm aware, but there might be exceptions.
Okay, I'm just reading through this, and this is members of the boards of registration are appointed by the governor and serve on a voluntary basis. So that makes it sound like it would also make sense too, because in this Levy v. Board ruling, because I was going to say their structure is very similar to a government because it's saying that the board is getting like statutes and regulations that are passed, which sounds like a legal system, but they are. Okay, so then the board is actually a legal entity that's recognized. Okay,
that's
sure.
what you're reading. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That should clear up a lot. So if you just read through a lot of like other various orders and cases, you'll get a picture of the shape of what this organization regulates and looks like when they're disciplining someone, which is why I just list a bunch of cases to see like, hey, this is what medical malpractice looks like, because this board is absolutely never, these boards are never shy about trying to draw specific lines. This is a legal body. They see things very specifically.
Sure, but I also doubt they want to blow up like doctors that are...
They do not give a fuck. They literally take doctors' licenses for fucking people. They do not care.
Well, that's a really big deal, though. Probably, right?
I'm sorry, what's a really big deal?
If a doctor was fucking a patient?
No. There's one of the cases in there is pursuing a romantic relationship after they had stopped being a patient at some point. And I think they'd done it once in the past, and they were like submitting. Either way, like if they felt that Dr. K's relationship with Reckful was, I don't know how much it would have to contribute.
Well, if that's the case, then why would they lay out all of this in the facts? Why wouldn't they just do like a 3-page report?
Because there's two parts to that. When you say they, do you think the state organized this piece of information in the facts and then presented it in this case?
Be more specific. What do you mean? Did the state?
So in that finding of fact, what body do you think laid out the finding of fact?
What body laid out? It's probably, my guess is going to be the board itself, because the board's the one that issued the consent order.
Okay, this is the thing that I found out when I was looking into this. The finding of fact contains evidence from both parties. So that includes the respondent and the board itself.
Sure.
And that is
any
so
complaints submitted to the board or whatever, I would imagine, and anything that came from their investigation, right?
No, the complaint, I can't say for certain, but because patient information could be within the complaint, I wouldn't expect it to be included in the finding of fact.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah, it could.
yeah.
But I'm saying, like, if a complaint was submitted where they complained that, like, this doctor was found, screaming the N-word at black patients coming to a hospital, that might show up in a finding of fact or whatever, right?
Yeah, sure. But
Yeah, sure.
like, so for instance, when you're reading the part about how he recommended Breckville see a therapist and followed standards of care, I actually have a hunch that was submitted by Dr. K.
Almost
in the
certainly,
upper-
for sure, yeah.
Yeah. So when it's laying out these points, it's not saying like, "Hey, this is the evidence. Can be evidence for or against the respondent that they want to use an appeal." Because apparently it's harder to admit new evidence if you've already gone through the case. But
Sure.
that's
Yeah,
just
well,
why-
because part of the consent order is they agree that this is like the final saying on these issues, right?
Yes. So,
Yeah.
for instance, it could be like Reckville could have been part of the case and part of the order, but because in the conclusion they don't specifically address Reckville, I find it highly suspect, especially given the.
So you don't think? I feel like when it comes to the findings of fact, there are probably way more facts that could be laid out here. I feel like the findings of fact that are listed are probably going to be the ones that are the most relevant to the reprimand. No, they're not just going to list random facts that they know to be true about Dr. K or his relationship with Reckville. No.
From the rules I read for Massachusetts specifically, unless it is explicitly false, findings of facts submitted by the respondent can't be purged from the finding of fact.
I feel like that can't be the case, because like theoretically, let's say that Dr. K decided to just like submit like 12 million random facts about his life. Like, there's no way that they would publish every single one, right?
I think they could, but these are like medical doctors risking, like, this is going before a judge without a jury. This is like, if you're fucking around, you're going to find out.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Anything else? Another epic debate win by
Another-
forethought.
another-
Redditors win again.
Epic debate. Janny's up hugely, bigly.
All right. Peace out.
Have fun. Be careful.